What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode with the School of Hard Knocks. I'm Jack, this is James and Josh, and we got three great entrepreneurship topics to talk about today. The first one being CEO and founder Mitch Tolson started a company called Ally Robotics. It was kind of a branch off of a company he used to work for called Miso Robotics. And so what I want to talk about with this story is basically he's trying to develop no-code robotics for people to be able to develop different products and different robotic capabilities without having to actually code them. And this is going to change a wave of industries. They talked about with Miso Robotics that they are already designing different robot techniques to take over like the fast food industry and replace a bunch of jobs there. So two things. One, how is this going to shape the landscape for entrepreneurs looking to get into robotics with the no code factor? And then also, the wave of jobs that this might wipe out.
Yeah, and I also saw within that one of the biggest market that they're tapping into right now is like kitchens all around the country, in people's homes, in restaurants. But I saw that the next market that they're really looking to tap into is manufacturing. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that shakes up certain industries. Obviously kitchen, restaurants, manufacturing, and they've already raised over like $110 million or 110 billion or 110 million.
Million. Yeah, but I think it said that it's like a potential $114 billion market industry that they're going after.
Yeah, robotics, artificial intelligence, just all those. So just everything's going that way,
Yeah, I think it's really cool to see this new era of no code because I think it's going to completely switch up a lot of different industries, especially the restaurant one. It's funny that we come across this article because back in the day, a couple months ago, I was actually receiving Instagram and Facebook ads all the time about invest into Miso Robotics and it's talking all about how they're gonna pretty much revolutionize the cooking and the back end of restaurants. So I think it's interesting to see how this will change like the job market within restaurants themselves. What do you guys think? How do you think this will affect jobs within like the food industry?
So my personal opinion is I think that a huge industry that's not being tapped into enough, I could be wrong, but the education surrounding artificial intelligence and robotics, there is huge opportunity for a company to come out with a scalable mass-wide training platform, especially for jobs that might be overtaken by artificial intelligence, in the instruction and teaching about AI and how to operate robotics. That way that those jobs don't completely go away. If those, people, those employees that are in those roles that are getting wiped out, if they could find some sort of training of how to learn, AI, and maybe with this no code feature could help them get into robotics a little bit easier, then maybe when, we find new developments and products that are going to come in and take jobs, that people aren't going to lose them as much. They'll just transition from actually doing the labor into just being an operator of the technology itself. And then that way, not as many people are going to lose jobs. They're just their skill level is just going to rise to keep up with the times of technology.
Yeah, and I mean the only thing I'd add is it's like the people that are going to be the ones because the no code robotics meaning like it doesn't require code to make them. Is that what it means by?
So how Miso Robotics currently works is it pretty much uses visual learning. So it will look at, let's say, a human doing the motions of cooking and what they do, and then it will learn the motions and pretty much how to do it by visualization.
Yeah. Is there like a programming that's required?
No. So it's just like it's a software that was written by code, but it's just you use that, and now you can basically it's similar to how like when they make the 2K games and like the NFL games, they'll have like people put on, and even with movies, like they'll have people put on like those motion sensor things, and then they'll track the movement of people, and then install that into the game. But with this, is developing a software that way it's just like if people have access to it, then they can be able to make adjustments to what they're doing and build it just based off the software motion tracking and motion sensing, and then store that same movement into the robot without actually having to write code to give it that process. Pretty much.
Well, I mean that just goes to show that they're going to end up taking out a lot of jobs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
A lot of minimum wage jobs are going to be taken out, quite frankly. But who's ever going to be writing that code to do that is going to make a lot of money.
Absolutely.
So the next topic I want to talk about today is quiet quitting. And this article is all about how hustle culture is out. Quiet quitters now make up half the U.S. workforce. And a new Gallup survey suggests workers are increasingly bothered by a lack of clarity about expectations, fewer opportunities to grow, and just feeling cared about overall. And it now says at least half of all U.S. workers now do the bare minimum of what's required for them at their jobs. And this is really interesting to me because it just shows that a lot of people, that's saying half of the people that go to their job every day are just trying to do the bare minimum, and they just don't really enjoy what they do, whether that's from the work itself or just the overall work environment that they're in.
Yeah, I saw that, pretty much they did a survey and they saw that, the number of people engaged in work from pre-COVID to now has dropped significantly, which kind of makes sense. People took that time off. They got a taste of home life and not having to do much, or at least they got a taste of remote work. And, maybe remote work, it's a little bit more relaxing. It's not as comfortable. It's not as engaging. And so you find that even people that are engaged in their work, another thing that I read is in addition to the people that aren't engaged, are also looking for new jobs. So it almost seems like kind of goes in line with what you were saying about, people not being exactly straightforward about what's expected of them at work. Even the people that there's a quick turnover rate that's kind of happening now post-COVID that people are wanting to transition to another job. It's going to be interesting to see how this might impact, the number of people wanting to start their own thing or go into entrepreneurship, because maybe, that sort of the way the workforce is headed, people aren't as engaged in the corporate environment.
Yeah, and I mean, right now, currently, it's crazy you bring this up because we're actually in the period that they're calling it like the Great Resignation, right? Where it's like so many people are kind of leaving their jobs. Some people aren't even going to find new work, but rather because a lot of things came with COVID, where a lot of government incentives kind of where people could get on unemployment. And honestly, some people were making more money by not working than actually going to work, which is crazy to think about. So it is very interesting, but at the same time, it's not really surprising. Again, it's like so many people, they're going to their job, 5 days a week, and they're not enjoying it. And it's like when they know that they can get incentives and they can get paid from doing nothing, it's like that's what's happening.
So what do you guys think is really the solution to this? The main thing that I thought of is it really comes down to management. And I think it comes to showing that, hey, these people don't feel like they're cared about. They just feel very disposable. So I think the way that we could, or companies could try to resolve this is by, managers actually showing that they care. Maybe meeting with team members once a week, even for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, would do massive changes to showing that, hey, I'm listening. I want to hear the changes. I want to hear your input. But besides that, do you guys think or have any possible solutions to think maybe fix this?
Yeah, so I think, at least from a mindset shift, is something that, if you're the head of the company or if you're a manager of a team, that the mindset that you should have going forward is the people under you don't work for you. You work for them.
Yep.
Pretty much whatever you can do to make their job and life easier, which, by the way, includes clear communication on what's expected of them and their tasks and priorities, what they need to be. Just facilitating them and just the right communication, I think, could prevent people from not knowing exactly what they're supposed to be doing at work and then just being disengaged and this sort of quiet quitting where they're not really in tune with the company and the values as well as just like what they're actually supposed to be doing when they're there. So that's why they start to go look for another job. But if managers as well as the people at the head of the company, in turn, we're just like, you know what? I'm going to be completely unselfish. The people under me are who I work for. I want to make their job as easy as possible and as direct as possible. And I think if, you see a company-wide implementation of that, there's going to be huge changes in people. They already know what they need to do. They see that somebody really cares about them, especially somebody who's above them in the corporate chain. And if they, see those changes implement, then a lot of success might happen. You might see these statistics about people wanting to leave their jobs overturn.
Like you said, the one thing I would add on to that is, again, I definitely do think management is ultimately the biggest thing that should be looked upon, and honestly, again, making it feel more of a positive environment and not so much like a strenuous job or where you're not looking forward to going. You know what I mean? You got to make it more
change up the culture.
It's more the mindset of not I have to go to work today. It's oh man, I get to go to work today. You know what I mean? So it's making it like that for the people that are going in every day.
Yeah.
But I think that takes us to our last article, and it's an article on Jeff Bezos, and he's been investing in, has been in venture capital, or right, he's been
He opened a venture capital firm in 2005.
so he's, ever since, he's been taking off, he's been investing in companies left and right. And they did a recent study of like kind of the companies that he's invested in over the last few years. And they have a really common trait right now is that they're all heavily focused on the digital marketplace and sustainability, but also they're all kind of targeting like Gen Z. So there's companies like Overtime Sports. There's Lumo, which was like a data analytics for like e-commerce stores, and it's really neat kind of to see kind of the approach that he's been taking with that. And it's cool because if you look at kind of like the industries over the next like 10 to 20 years, they're going to grow as far as like money going into them. It's financial literacy, it's sustainability, and all these different areas that he's kind of making sure that he's got his mark all over in different startups across the country.
Yeah, and one that I really want to talk about is Overtime Sports. I mean, if you're someone kind of like, our generation, you're probably and if you're a sports fan, you're probably pretty familiar with Overtime Sports. I know they've gone really heavily on turning, a lot of their, key employees into influencers as well, just building a brand not only around a certain topic or niche, but they're also trying to build the personal brands of the people that work at Overtime. And I think that's something that's really cool and stand out about the company. I saw that like they got in one series $80 million in funding and $100 million in funding in another series, which is kind of unbelievable to me that they are a content company, and you're seeing the creator economy now here in 2022 that content companies can get serious 9-figure funding, and now they're a 9-figure valuation at $500 million.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting how they're doing that take of turning their employees into influencers. And one of the things that I'm curious about is in doing that, where you give your employees so much freedom to go ahead and create their own personal brand, which I think is great, but it also opens up that option of, can those people just go ahead and leave the company now that they've established their own brand themselves?
It was really cool that you brought up, the personal brands of, a company like Overtime with their employees, is because and you also kind of see this with the esports companies where they give the company name before, the person's actual name for their personal brand. Also, when we're talking about the last topic with the quiet quitting, people not being as engaged in work, wanting to leave the company, maybe look for another job, this makes it a lot harder if your whole personal brand is based around working for a company. And I'm sure that it also improves your morale when it comes to working for that company as well. Like, you just enjoy working there because your brand is kind of based around that company. We see that with FaZe Clan, like FaZe Rug and like all this other stuff. So it's I just think it's fascinating. Content companies been able to build, a 9-figure evaluation. Really inspiring. There are a lot of other cool companies that he's investing in this year too. I think 9 in total.
Do you think part of their business model is getting a percentage of their personal brands deals and stuff like that as well? So let's say, you work for Overtime and you're an influencer for them. Do you think that they get a share of all the deals that they get that are because their name is, associated to the brand?
No question. And the example which I think is a very famous example, is when it comes to, the WWE wrestler John Cena. His name is John Cena. That's his birth name. But WWE holds the actual commercial rights to it. So every time John Cena stars in a movie, he stars in, a commercial or whatever, him using his personal brand, everything he does with his real name in it, he has to give a cut to WWE because they own the commercial rights to his name, because they made him who he is pretty much and gave him that personal brand. So I think 100% they take some percentage of everything that these people make.
Thanks for tuning in, guys. We're going to be posting these videos Monday through Friday. Again, James, Jack, and Josh with the School of Hard Knocks. Leave a like, subscribe. We got tons of great new content coming for you guys. See you guys next time.